Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo aren't the same quarterback, but the way they rapidly rose to a level of stardom that far outpaces their skill set is almost identical, and I'd like to go through the similarities. So as you know, Brock Purdy started the final 5 games of the regular season, won all of them, far exceeded expectations, went to the playoffs, won 2 games, lost the NFC Championship, and now people in the media, people in the organization, John Lynch himself have said that Brock Purdy has a real chance to be a franchise quarterback for the 49ers despite his meager skill set because of the way he won his first 7 games, how special he played in those 7-8 games. Is that not exactly what the 49ers and people said about Jimmy Garoppolo in 2017? Remember, they traded for him at the trade deadline. He didn't play right away. He took over a team that was 1-10. It was awful. No Nick Bosa, no Deebo Samuel, no Emmanuel Sanders. Like, George Kittle was a rookie. Pierre Garçon was on IR. The number 1 wide receiver on the team was Marquise Goodwin. Jimmy Garoppolo took over that team and won 5 games in a row. Except that team was terrible. Brock Purdy's team was great. It was already on a 4-game winning streak when he took over. Not this Jimmy Garoppolo 2017 team. So he came in, he looked like he was working magic with nobodies on the team. They scored 44 points against Jacksonville. Don't forget that. Jacksonville went to the AFC Championship game that year. That was really everyone pointed to that game at the time that proved that Jimmy Garoppolo was a franchise quarterback. And what did the Niners do after that game? Now, keep in mind, they didn't make the playoffs because they were 1-10 without Jimmy, but if he had gotten on the field earlier, he didn't even know the system, they might have made the playoffs that year. And if they had, they might have won a game or 2, considering how hot they were. So that's what the legend of Jimmy Garoppolo was like in 2017. And he had started 2 games for the Patriots before he came to the Niners. He was 7-0 as a starter, just like Brock is, 7-1. And so what the Niners do, they called him a franchise quarterback. They made him the highest paid player in the league off of 7 games. Comes back 2018, goes 1-2, tears his ACL. Comes back 2019, wins 8 games in a row. He's 16-2 as a starter. Once again, people are saying he's a winner. He's a franchise quarterback. Who cares that he almost never pushes the ball more than 30 yards down the field? Who cares that he's not a great athlete? He just wins, 16-2. Loses a couple games, but then he goes into New Orleans and beats Drew Brees and Sean Payton 48-46. And that was the moment when even Jimmy's biggest skeptics said this guy is a franchise quarterback. He just out-dueled Drew Brees. He must be better than Drew Brees. The Niners are going to win the Super Bowl, and Jimmy's going to be the Super Bowl MVP. All kind of stuff like that was getting said at that point. He was 19-4 as a starter in his career, and he put up 48 points against the Saints. And remember in that game, he was throwing deep passes. He had Emmanuel Sanders deep down the middle for like 50 yards. That was a whole different Jimmy. And then what happened? He went to the playoffs, unraveled, never was the same. And now you got the 49ers in that situation with Brock. He went to the playoffs. He really beat up on the Seahawks, and then the Niners beat the Cowboys with defense. Scored 19 points in that game. Didn't put him away on offense. Had a couple interceptions dropped by the Cowboys, but the Niners were great on defense, forced a couple turnovers, won the game on defense, and then the Niners couldn't even compete. It's not really Brock's fault, even though Kyle Shanahan said it was for not stepping up in the pocket. They couldn't block anyone. They were under pressure like 60% of their dropbacks. But now you got a quarterback that people are saying is a franchise quarterback because he just wins. Well, Jimmy Garoppolo just won. And my whole thing with Jimmy is I never thought he was a franchise quarterback. I always felt that despite all the wins and all the stats, that you got to trust your eyes when you look at something. When you look at a quarterback, you got to trust your eyes. Everyone could see that Jimmy Garoppolo was terrible at pushing the ball more than 20 yards, 30 yards down the field. Couldn't do it. And that eventually came back to bite him. Defenses didn't respect his deep ball. They played 8 in the box. And he would force passes underneath over the middle anyway and get picked. That's what they're doing to Brock. They respect his arm even less. They play 8 in the box even more. And he's not going to be throwing deep passes 30 yards down the field toward the sideline to beat him. He might throw a couple. Like, he challenges down the field even less than Jimmy does. Jimmy's not particularly accurate. How many times did Brock actually throw the ball more than 30 yards down the field last year? I can think of twice. He had the touchdown to Kittle and the interception in Vegas. So, yeah, he runs around better than Jimmy. He's cheaper than Jimmy. He's younger than Jimmy. But when the ball leaves Brock's hand, it's a lot. It's like the same thing as when the ball leaves Jimmy's hands. It's not going down the field. It's not that special. So, I don't know. I'm not that moved by the win-loss record or the numbers. The question is, does that skill set on any team win a Super Bowl? We'll see. I never felt Jimmy Garoppolo had the skill set to win a Super Bowl. And now Brock Purdy, yeah, he's younger, cheaper, more mobile, for sure. He's also smaller with a weaker arm that has now been surgically repaired. So he's a great asset to the team. He's a starting quarterback. If he's your backup, he's the best backup in the league. He's cheap. But the idea that he's the franchise quarterback and that like the search is over and that he's just going to start week 1 with no offseason, that just seems like you don't know that. That's what you thought about Jimmy Garoppolo. And now you're making the same rush to judgment with Brock Purdy just because you're desperate for a quarterback. So maybe it's not the similarities between them. It's the similarities between how the Niners have anointed them. Here's the thing. Thank goodness Brock Purdy isn't eligible for an extension the way Jimmy Garoppolo was after his 5 starts with the Niners. Because if Brock Purdy was eligible for an extension right now, you know the Niners would give it to him. They'd give him $150 million right now just to say, hey, look, we have our franchise quarterback, even though they haven't proven that yet. Jimmy Garoppolo was 19-4 as a starter at one point in his career. Beat Drew Brees. Go back and look at what you tweeted that day. I bet you said he's better than Drew. We got our guy. Well, apparently not. The jury's still out on Brock. He could be a franchise quarterback or not. Need more information here, and until you get it, the search continues.